Okay, ready to get this party started. Hello! My name's Roger Grimes. I'm with Microsoft, Principal Security Architect. Been with Microsoft for 10, 11 years. Been doing computer security for about 30 years. Do a lot of stuff with honeypots and things like that. I've written 10 books now, including a book on this subject, plus about 1,000 magazine articles. I write for InfoWorld and CSO Online, so if you hate that guy that's always saying contrary things, that's me. And I'm so glad you're here today because I wasn't sure how many people were going to show up on a Friday after the big party on Thursday night, especially in the morning, but I'm glad that we have you. And if you're not sure what this is going to be, what is a data-driven defense, all I can tell you is that my goal today is to excite you so much about this subject that for the rest of your life, you do not look at computer security the same way again. There was a you before you walked into this room, and there's going to be a different you after you come out of this room. There are some of the books I've written. Probably my best-selling one is Hacking the Hacker, which came out a couple of months ago. I have one called A Data-Driven Computer Security Defense on Amazon. Do not buy that book. Let me say it again. Do not buy my book. It is not ready for sale, and it's supposed to be like, hey, I'm going to publish it in December. For some reason, they put it up for sale, and they can't cut it off right now. If you were to buy that book, you would get a book that just had the free white paper. There's the link for the free white paper. It's much cheaper than the book. So remember that again. Do not buy the book till like December or something like that. But the white paper's for free, and everything I say in here is in the white paper for free. So we're going to read three major things. First of all, what the problem is, what the solution is, and then how Microsoft does it. And I'm going to say how Microsoft does it internally. I'm part of MSIT, and also how we do it in our products. And I started bringing up the kind of the data-driven defense. I was a big proponent of it early on and had to fight within Microsoft. And it was even one of those things that early on I kind of got in trouble about. Like I'm either being accoladed and recommended for some type of weird award or I'm about to get fired. That's the type of guy I am. And data-driven defense was kind of the same way. I was like, hey, do you got data? Do you got data? You said you're going to do this. Do you got data? And literally I had people saying, I hope he either quits or can we get him fired? But now it is a part of our culture at Microsoft. It's embedded in everything we do. It's part of what we call in MSIT, one of our big bets. And these days in Microsoft, if you bring an idea, a way to mitigate some problem and you don't have data, they're going to tell you to go get the data. So it's really changed our culture, and so I'll be sharing a lot of that today. So what's the problem? So this is how most IT defenders work. If you can imagine, if there were two armies fighting, let's say a good army and a bad army, and they've been fighting for years and years and years, and the evil side was winning on the left flank somehow over and over and over again, well, if you were a real army, you would probably put more troops on the left flank. But if you're in IT world, for some reason, the way that most IT defenders respond is that they don't do anything right, or they put more troops on the right flank, or they heard about a potential threat that's coming through the air and they start putting all kinds of troops lined up vertically in the center, and then wondering how come the evil army keeps on winning. I've been doing this a long, long time. I go to 10 to 30 customers a year for almost 30 years. Most of the time I'm doing security reviews of their environment, and I try to do a good job, and I hand them a report that's prioritized, and it goes, this is what you need to fix. Here's the reports are hideous, right? They're like 30 to 100 pages long, although Jeff gave me, my new friend Jeff told me he got a report 30,000 pages long. That's probably the longest I've heard of. But I hand him this report that says you need to fix these 50 or 75 things or whatever it is. If you only get like 20 recommendations from me, you're in the top 3 percentile of doing good things. But I give them this big list, and I was like, here are the 2 or 3 things you need to do. You need to patch Java, you need to fight social engineering, you need to put out this group policy, you need to make your passwords longer. And what I noticed is that when I came back the next year to do another security review or audit, never have they ever done the 1 or 2 or 3 things I told them to do. Like it'd be a company that was broken into because of unpatched Java. They could have lost, and I'm not making this figure up, $300 million in damages that they had to pay because they got broke into for unpatched Java. And when I come back a year later, guess what the #1 problem is? unpatched Java. I'm like, my God, why? Like, I used to sit there. As a matter of fact, one of my colleagues said, don't you get frustrated when people don't follow your advice? And I said, no, I gave up hope a long time ago. I now assume that they're not going to do what I say, and you just have to emotionally compartmentalize it and just figure that's our job, or you're not going to be able to do this job. And worse than that is that things are kind of so bad that every company is either thoroughly hacked or could easily be hacked. When I'm part of the penetration testing team, which I am sometimes at Microsoft, when I used to work at Foundstone years ago, I was all the time, I don't know a red team penetration team that doesn't always completely own the environment. Like, have you ever had it where you hired a red team in your company and they didn't break into everything? I've never heard of it. Matter of fact, we'd probably question the red team skills or something like that. So just most of the IT defenders aren't doing the right things, and most of them are just as exploitable as that. Like, we got hacked again. We got hacked. You know why? It's because people aren't doing the right things, or at least in the right places. So this is why most companies are inefficient defenders. They don't understand the threats and risk as well as they think they do. Matter of fact, if I go into most companies and I go to the IT security department and I go, hey, what's your number one problem? And I ask them in secret. So, and I've done this. I did this at Microsoft. I did it at lots of companies. Tell me what the number one threat is, successful exploit that is breaking into your environment. I never ever get consensus. Usually it's about a 20-20-20. You know, someone thinks it's viruses, somebody thinks it's social engineering, people always come with this obscure weird stuff, like they're like it's, I don't know, some heart bleed worm or something like that. But if you don't have consensus in the IT security team, how can you possibly be an efficient defender? How can the rest of the people who are trying to help you do the job be efficient? How can the CSO, like I hear people blame the CSO, he's not giving me the right things to do my job and blah, blah, blah. He hasn't been communicated what the right things are. All the CSO knows is that he probably is given a lot more money and resources over time, and he still just is breaking, the ability for bad guys to break in is just the same as before. So another big thing I noticed is that people don't have any data to back it up. Like, I'll go into a place and go, what's your number one biggest threat? They're like, I think it's viruses. Well, first of all, we'd have to kind of go, hey, it's probably worms or hybrid malware. Viruses are pretty low on the totem pole today. But then I go, okay, how do you know how do you know that? Do you have a list of how that compares versus social engineering or something like that? Or I'll ask them, if you got broken in, if you tell me your number one problem is some specific malware program, that's not your number one problem, right? It's how did that thing get into your company? And if you're saying a particular name, again, you probably got it wrong. So they usually don't have the data, or when they give me the data, it's not really the right data. So they don't end up putting the right defenses in the right places in the right amounts. And that's pretty common too. Like, I was working at one of the largest exchanges in the world, financial exchanges. I was there to put in a smart card project, and the CIO was meeting with me at the end of the smart card project saying, kind of a follow-up. And this project was on time, on budget, did everything it was supposed to do. We know how rare that kind of is. But it went all according to plan, and then we were doing this, hey, you did a good job. And the CIO says, I'm glad you did a good job. And she said, I'm so glad that we don't have to worry about pass-the-hash attacks anymore. I was like, what? Because I know that pass-the-hash attacks or credential theft, you can steal the hash behind the scenes. They don't care whether you use the USB key or retinal scan or whatever. If you steal the hash, you can still pass it all around the network. And so I said to her, this is not going to stop pass-the-hash attacks. And she said, what? I could literally see that she now didn't like me that much. Like her attitude changed. We were going through the process and the procedures. But then somebody came in and said, hey, I need your ear. And they whispered in her ear. And I said, what was that? She said, we just had another pass-the-hash attack. And from then on, she became one of my biggest fans. Because I said, someone sold you a bill of goods where they said this would fix that problem, and they didn't give you the data. They didn't tell you how it was really going to work, but it sounded really good to get smart cards. And let me say, there's a lot of good reasons to get smart cards. It stops phishing attacks and all kinds of other stuff, but it doesn't stop credential theft attacks like pass-the-hash attacks. So you end up spending too many resources not getting the right results. Happens all this time. But then you say, well, how did it get this way? I mean, nobody wants to be a bad army. Well, one of the things is the sheer number of threats. This chart's a little bit old just because the Microsoft Security Intelligence Report, the last one, number 22 that came out recently, didn't have that chart. But that's from Microsoft Security Intelligence Report 21, the one before that. But on average, the number of threats that we get is 5 to 6 to 7,000 a year. That's at least 15 a day. So every day, we are hit by, hey, you have to take care of this, you got to patch this, you got to do this. We are coming in, driving to work for our next day, and you're hearing on CNN or NPR or Fox News or whatever about some new threat, and you know by the time you get to the office, the boss is going to want to know how vulnerable you are and what you're doing about it, right? Even if it really has no relevance to you actually being attacked. So a lot of threats every day, that's a lot. 15 a day. I mean, I don't think any other industry, I don't think the Army has that many threats a day. And we really are kind of at DEFCON 4 right now. I bet their number of threats is maybe 7 a day. So how did it get competition for your attention, for everybody's attention? It's the threat of the week. I mean, how many times have you been on a number one priority? This is your number one priority, and then you get so many number one priorities, you say, listen, I need you to risk rank which one of my number ones is really my number one. And they're like, all of them. And then you go, no, I really need to know. And they're like, this is your number one. You're like, all right. I got my marching orders. I know what to do. I've got my number 1 and 2 and 3. And then the next day, something comes out on the radio, and guess what? That's number 1 now for you. So a lot of competition. Compliance concerns. If you want to get something fixed in a company, I learned early on, you had a security problem, and you want to get it, and they've been ignoring you, pull out some FASB-type guide or something that says that you're not going to be in compliance with something, and that will get it done faster than anything. And sometimes compliance is not the same as security. Like almost all security guides today tell you that your password has to be at least 8 characters or long, or maybe 12 characters or long, or stronger. And if you do, and they have to be complex and frequently changed, right? Is there a compliance thing that isn't that way today? No. But we know from doing research, Microsoft research, that that really is old advice. That really, now the new advice is, don't worry about the size of your passwords. They don't have to be complex, and you don't need to change them unless you think you've had a compromise. That's the new password advice. It's been that way for a year or two. It's the advice from NIST. It's the newest advice from Microsoft, but because of compliance concerns, you are not going to be able to do that. Because if you don't have complexity checked, everybody is going to ding you on their audit. So there is a difference between compliance and security, and let me assure you, like my Microsoft friend, in the book Hacking the Hackers, I profile him because almost everything he does in Microsoft research goes against conventional wisdom. I said, well, how does it feel that everything that you're discovering here is not going to be implemented for like 10 years? And he's like, well, it's all right, I got over it. He said, CIOs and people have a lot of stuff going on, a lot of threats, and I'm a guy that literally gets to focus on the problem and test it. But one of his big things was, I have data. I got data. He goes, I was surprised when I came into this field. He came from another field. And he said, I got in this field and people said, hey, I have to have long passwords. He goes, I said, well, show me the data. He goes, they didn't have any data. Everybody was yelling at me. Yelling, how stupid are you? You got to have long and complex passwords that are changed all the time. Everybody knows that. So he actually did a test of it and found out that seemed to actually, every company that did that seemed to get exploited more via their passwords than companies that did nothing, none of that. Although if I come audit you with Microsoft in our baseline, I'm still going to tell you that you need 8 characters or more in complex. Because why? That's still the compliance baseline for every legal compliance baseline in the world. And if we were to tell you not to do that, you're going to be audited by accounting or by HIPAA, and they're going to ding you. So a lot of that is just sometimes slow pet projects. That's one of my favorites, is that you've got your number 1 priorities, and in your number 1 priorities is a project that you personally know is not going to help that much, but it is some executive officer's pet project. They know the vendor, they like the product or something like that, so it's got to get done. Budgeting. Sometimes you come up with this, we need to get smart cards, we need to get this. How long does it take to get a multi-$100,000 project approved? A long time. Sometimes by the time you get it approved, it's not even worthwhile anymore. Like a lot of y'all may be saying, what? If I'm shocking you with the whole password doesn't have to be long and complex anymore, you may say, my God, Roger, I've been trying to get there for 20 years. We just got there, and now you're telling me that it's going to hurt me? Yeah. It's inertia, takes long, budgeting. Also, IT organization and corporate culture. IT organization, as many companies, like Microsoft. Microsoft has more different business units and operating entities than you imagine. I'm in MSIT, right? I control the IT of Microsoft, and what I say goes. So I came up with a really good group policy that I knew would help us a lot. And I had to fight for 2 years to push out that group policy setting to all of Microsoft. I was so proud of myself after 2 years. Well, someone said, well, it's not really all of Microsoft. I was like, what do you mean? Like, oh, it's really like 16% of Microsoft. I was like, what do you mean? Like, oh yeah, we're not in charge. We can't change what the people do over in that cloud, or you can't change Xbox, and they do their own thing. Xbox, like, you're not coming in here and telling us what to do. You're so insecure. You're so insecure, we're not going to let you. We've had that group policy setting for 20 years. You're not going to tell us. And I realized that, oh my God, every recommendation I thought was all of Microsoft. I was like probably 7 years of Microsoft before I realized I was only impacting 16% Microsoft because of our business silos. In corporate culture, everybody says, hey, I always start the interview or the review going, how much risk can you accept? And everybody always says, well, very low risk. We care about security a whole lot. Must be low risk what we do. We need high security. I was like, okay, let's put application whitelisting using AppLock or Device Guard on every computer you have. Let's lock it down so you can only run the things that are that have been approved by IT. People are like, wow, whoa, 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 calm down. We can't do that. We need to let users install anything they want. I was like, well, if you really cared about security the most, you would lock that machine down so that it couldn't do anything except for what it's supposed to do. And let me say, one day, AppGuard or Device Guard or whatever it have, there's a lot of products out there. That's what you're going to be running on your machine, something that significantly locks down the end user's ability to install and run anything. That's guaranteed. It's just going to take 10 years to get there. But that is the single best thing you can do for a computer system, is to lock it down so people can't install things that you didn't approve or run scripts that you didn't approve or whatever. That's the number one way that people are broken into by malware today, is running things that they shouldn't run. Also, we're very bad about figuring out risk, even if we've been told the risk. Like, I live at Key Largo. My wife and I knew that our first floor room was going to flood one day. We knew it was going to happen. So for 6 years, we built the most expensive, beautiful room on the first floor that we could, that we just finished about a month ago. It's now been destroyed. Apparently, we were not paying attention to all the, hey, the water's warming and you're going to have a big hurricane. But what I love is that almost everybody that comes to my house to go swimming or fishing or diving or snorkeling or whatever, is like, they always go, hey, are there sharks here? I'm like, if there's salt water, there's sharks. They're like, well, I don't want to go in the water. I'm like, did you drive here in a car? They said, yep. I said, driving in the car on US 1 is the most dangerous thing you can do out of this entire trip. That's tens of thousands of times more likely to kill you. Or your trip to the airport is more likely to kill you than being on the airplane, but that doesn't stop most of us from having some fear of being on an airplane. Humans just aren't great, even when we know what the odds are, of figuring it out. Like, I bought a lottery ticket this week. It's 1 in $66 million, but somebody's got to win. So I'm in, because I apparently don't understand the odds so well. So another thing is a lack of unintelligence. And this right here is key. If you're falling asleep, this is one of the most key parts of this talk, is that people go, oh, I have threat intelligence, and my company gives me threat intelligence. I get a report. I remember one of my friends from this morning saying, yep, I get a threat intelligence report from our threat intelligence team. I said, I bet it's full of all kind of useless garbage that doesn't really apply to your team, that doesn't apply to your company. And he was like, yeah. Most of the time, threat intelligence teams do a great job of disseminating, and if you're in that team, I just want to know how much of the stuff that you report to people is your actual own successful exploit data, how your company was successfully exploited the most, versus you're grabbing attacks off the internet. The most important intelligence is the local. How did you get exploited? How did you get successfully exploited the most, your company? How is it most likely to be successfully exploited the most? And almost nothing else matters. That is what matters. If you cannot say, this is how we're exploited, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, it's not really good in threat intelligence. And it should be root cause. So if your company has, let's say, a lot of adware, the number 1 malware program on most company computers is adware, right? That is just trying to redirect your clicks or whatever. But the important thing there is that the effort it took for that adware to infect your computers is 100% the same effort that it would take for a really bad guy, advanced persistent threat Trojan to take over the same computer. So if you start thinking about the threat and the real risk, it's the root cause you need to focus on. How did you get there? Like when you get a bunch of viruses or something on your system, you get the list of, this is all the viruses we detected and removed. How did they get there? Was it social engineering? Was it websites? Was it email? Did it come in a Word doc? Did it come in an Excel doc or something like that? Did it come in scripting? Was it a PowerShell script? If you can't get that type of information, then you really don't have threat intelligence for your company. You have threat intelligence for somebody else's company. And lack of focus on root causes. Like when I go into most companies, the two biggest threats that I see is unpatched software and social engineering. When I come back a year later, same problems. It should be that if you knew that you had that unpatched software was your biggest problem, that you would actually create a team that really worked really well to not have unpatched software. Or social engineering. Most companies get about 30 minutes to an hour of anti-social engineering training a year, comes in a memo or a video, and something like 30, 40, 50, 60% of the people that get that training are still able to be socially engineered. I love Jimmy Kimmel. Somebody showed at this talk this year, Jimmy Kimmel interviewing people in the street where they were just asking them their passwords. And you're like, that's crazy, but I did that for Foundstone, and we were able to ask lots of people their password out. We'd go, hey, what's your password? We give you a candy bar. We're amazed by how many people gave us their real password. We actually followed it up with their company, and we said, just want you to verify percentage, and it was something like 60% gave us their real password. So again, can your IT security team give you the right answer? Is it consistent across all team members? And do you have data to back up the answer? Because just because you believe, I think it's social engineering, like I'm saying up here today, the social engineering is most companies' #1 problem. If you don't have the data, how do you know? It's great to have a gut feeling, much better to have data. So root cause is very important. I care how the bad thing gets in. Me personally, I care more about how the bad thing gets in than what the bad thing is or what the bad thing did after it got in. Like one of my favorite things, like when pass the hash attacks came out, all my customers were like, well, you got to tell us how to stop pass the hash attacks. I was like, stop the attacker from getting domain admin. They're like, yeah, but we can't do that. So how do we stop pass the hash attacks? I was like, and I really focused. I was kind of arguing with my students and my customers because I was like, if you're not focusing on the real root cause, which is they're getting domain admin, then you're never going to solve the problem because they're just going to do something else. When they have domain admin, they own your environment. They can make DCs. And sure enough, we went from pass the hash to golden ticket to blah, 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 blah. And let me say this. If we got rid of all the pass the hash attacks in the world, and we've gotten rid of a lot of them if you can implement the defenses, we got a lot of defenses today. But if you do that, it's not going to stop the bad guy if they're still getting domain admin. They're just going to rewrite your operating system or put in a backdoor Trojan or something like that. The problem isn't pass the hash. Pass the hash is worrying about the brakes in your car that's been stolen. The thief has the entire car. How did they get in your car? So this is because of all these problems and inefficiencies. We have all these problems, 15 a day, hitting us thousands a year. It's like bubbles in a glass of champagne, and this is how defenses are applied. Or let me say, this is best case scenario. What I see is people expending millions of dollars on the wrong defenses. Roger, yes, I know that unpatched software is my #1 problem, but I really need to get smart cards in. I'm a big PKI guy. I do a lot of PKI installs. I have for 20 years. I love doing them, but if you're thinking PKI is going to save your company, you're probably focusing on the wrong problem. It's probably something a lot simpler. Even though I would love for you to spend money with Microsoft so that I can install PKI for you. It's an important thing. It's not the most important thing. So what's the result? A lot of built-in inefficiencies, right? The defenders fail to identify in a clear and timely way all the threat scenarios they face. They don't focus on how initial compromises happen. This is the big one, they don't understand the comparative relative risk. They don't communicate. Yeah, if you don't understand what the risks are, how can you even communicate? But when I talk to people, even when they know the risk, they're not communicating it to other people. They're not communicating it to the CSO correctly. I went up to our CSO, Brett Arsenault, great guy. I really do love him. He's been my boss for 7 or 8 years. He is a guy that knows how to get things done. But I remember many years ago, I said, what's our #1 threats, right? And he's a CSO guy. He's at a high level. He's like, well, I think it's the cloud, and I think it's this, and credential hygiene. And in my head, I was thinking, it's unpatched Java, right? Like I had the data to show at that particular time that unpatched Java was a big deal that was being involved in a lot of exploits. And when I finally communicated it to him, a lot of people communicated it, we were able to fix that problem. But it's many times not communicated well. So I can't blame him for not focusing on unpatched Java. Like, he'd heard unpatched Java was a problem, but he didn't know it was the #1 problem. When he found out that it was a big problem, he put together the resources, time, and the money that made it not become a problem anymore. And now we don't have near as much of a problem with it. And then a lot of times people deploy stuff that never ever does anything. Like, a really common thing is someone gets a new HIDS or NIDS or cool advanced firewall. Every time I see advanced firewall, I kind of chuckle, because we've had advanced firewalls for 30 years, as long as I've been in the IT security thing. And we still have a lot of viruses and Trojans, and you're still just as broken in as possible. Let me say that firewalls actually do a pretty good job at what the firewall is designed to do. Firewalls are so good that the attackers and the threats moved around the firewall. And advanced firewalls can help you. But if you don't stop the end user from clicking on every link and attachment sent your way, advanced firewall doesn't work, right? Advanced firewall works so well that it doesn't work anymore. Because people are clicking on stuff. And if I can call you and say, give me your password, it's all bets off. So all these implementation weaknesses lead to misalignment of computer security defenses against the greatest threats. The solution, how do we fix it? Data analytics, data, and focusing on the right things. So that's the crux of this. You can leave. I appreciate you coming. But it is get data, get real data that helps you focus on the right things. Oh, there we go. So, again, if we do it right, you'll have a data-driven defense that efficiently prevents breaches and movement. Not only this, and this is an important one, you'll recognize the increase in emerging threat even quicker. It's like when I wrote one of my first books, Malicious Mobile Code in 2001, one of the guys who was editing the book's like, hey, you're not covering USB threats. I said, what the crap is that? He's like, well, I'm in Brazil and USB key threats are all over the place. I was like, well, you're an idiot. I swear to God, I was like dismissive to him. I was like, well, that's kind of crazy. 2 years later, they were everywhere. I was like, how did I miss this, right? Because I didn't have the data to show that USB key stuff was becoming a big, big deal. But if you have a data-driven defense, you'll see emerging threats quicker. You'll more efficiently prevent breaches and the movement once they're in. You'll decrease the root cause. If you're not decreasing the root cause of how someone or something got in your environment, you are not fixing the problem. And then historic and current attacks against your organization matter the most. Let your own organization's experience drive the risk assessment. And then use that data to right align against the most critical threats. And do it with data and prove it. So if you do it right, this is the old way, right? All these different threats, and oh my God, how am I going to do? I like my perfect one. Try anything, patch anything, warnings, not sure, ignore, looking into. Well, once you get the right data, you're going to say, here's my #1 most root cause exploited threat. It's social engineering, or it's unpatched this, or unpatched that. And then you find out your top 3 or top 5 most exploited root causes, and you set about fixing them. If you are not doing that today with data, you are not defending efficiently or correctly. And let me say, 99.9% of companies are not doing this. I've been, in my entire career of 30 years, I've had one company that did it this way. And I was like, oh my God, I was like, come here, let me talk to you. Come talk to me, sweet child. And I would tell you their name, except for if I told you their name, there'd no doubt be some hacker that broke into them tomorrow. So I'm not going to malign them that way. But they did it right. So you end up with a data-driven defense planning cycle. You collect local threat intelligence, rank risk appropriately, create an effective communications plan, define and collect your metrics, select and deploy root cause defenses, and review as needed. But let me say, I can boil this all down into, this is what my whole data-driven defense philosophy is. Find out what's attacking you or how attackers are breaking in and stop those things. It seems so simple, but almost no one's doing it. But like Dr. Dorothy Denning read my white paper and she said, Roger, this is a great paper. I told her I was writing a book. She goes, I'll write the forward for your book. I like this idea so much. And Sands promoted it. Bruce Schneier promoted it. And all I'm saying is literally defend against the things you should be doing. Don't waste money on the stuff that you shouldn't be doing. But it's just hard. Why? Why is it hard? Because we have 15 threats a day coming at us. We've got politics and budgets and people pulling our attention. And again, this is all in the white paper. So if you do it right, you're going to have more intelligent threat intelligence, localized for your organization. How are you broken in successfully the most? Inclusive threat detection, more inclusive threat detection. Focusing on root cause analysis so that you can better align your mitigations to streamline mitigations against the root causes of successful exploitation. That's what we're trying to do here. So again, focus on better local threat intelligence. Focus on your own org's historic and current attacks first. Then after that, the stuff that's most likely to impact you or your industry. And then after that, all those cool reports, including the cool reports from Microsoft. Security Intelligence Report is a fantastic guide. If you've not looked at the Security Intelligence Report, go to microsoft.com/SIR. I think it's going to be published twice a year now instead of 4 times, but it really does a great job of showing what's the most popular threat in a particular country or region and what type of thing. And there's good, I'm going to show you that there's really great information in that, and I often contribute and edit that particular publication. But none of that publication means anything unless you're actually having that problem. Like I think about how many of the companies I come into that had the Heartbleed vulnerability everywhere, right? They do a Nessus scan or Rapid7 or whatever it is, and it's like Heartbleed, Heartbleed, Heartbleed. But they have mitigations like firewalls that block going to that port, SSL, TLS, on all of those machines, so it's never going to be successful even if you have the vulnerability. Let me say this, and if you're falling asleep, wake up here, because I'm trying to make you a very valuable employee to your company or as a consultant. There is a gulf between the biggest number of exploits, or the thing that has the biggest number of exploits in your company, and the thing that is most likely to exploit your company. And knowing the difference is all the difference. Meaning that the most unpatched piece of software in this world, well, if I read reports many times, is that, what's it called? The Visual Basic DLL that's in a lot of different applications. It's the number one unpatched thing is this DLL. I forget what it's called off the top of my head. I should have researched it again or thought about it again. But it's the Visual Basic, what's it? Nah, it's not CDO. It's like MS, VB, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, something like that. But so it's the Microsoft Visual Included Libraries or something. As far as I know, it has never been exploited in the wild. It is very exploitable if it's unpatched, and we tell you to patch it. I've never heard of anyone ever being exploited because of it. Because it's always in the weird and unknown path locations and it's not usually on services that are advertising, and it's a different place in every program, a different version. But are people getting exploited because they didn't patch Office or a browser or Adobe or Java? Yeah. Even if it's not as many places as the Microsoft thing. So understand that difference is so important. So my friend that said he got the 30,000 page report this morning, which just blew me away, he said that, of course, they summarized it to 2 pages or something like that. And he said, but a couple of the things he put in there, one was like Safari, that you have Safari on Windows or something like that. But he started looking at the list. He's like, oh my God, a lot of this stuff just is not exploitable in my environment. Or we have firewalls on port, on the SSL TLS port. So it's important to understand. What I want you to do is focus on current and historic successful attacks. The number of vulnerabilities in your environment doesn't mean anything to me. I don't care. It's like when you have a house. There's all kinds of vulnerabilities. A bad guy can break in through the garage, through the front door, through the windows or whatever. In your neighborhood, how has that bad guy been breaking into houses? If he's been breaking into houses through the window, it's not going to help you to get a better door. And it doesn't mean that they can't break in some other way, right? People go, Roger, if I focus on the historical stuff, how do I know they won't come in using some new exploit that's brand new and break into me? Well, I can't promise you that. But what I can tell you is that if you have to defend against something, odds are, probability are, of how you're being broken in currently today successfully the most is how you're probably currently most successfully going to be broken to in the future. That's the way it works. That's why it's the most. It's literally the definition. So you have to defend against that, and you can try everything else as well. So data analytics. Data is king. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Gut feeling should be backed up by data. You need to capture root causes. Data is used to drive event alerting. And metrics are needed for comparisons and reporting. The perfect data event to create security alerts should contain the following attributes. High likelihood that occurrence indicates unauthorized activity. Either a single occurrence or an unexpectedly large number, or let me say small number of events as well, right? It could be something that disappears all of a sudden. In a given time period indicates a high chance of maliciousness. Low number of false positives. Occurrence should result, if you have an occurrence of this event, it should always result in somebody investigating. How's that for a firewall log? Does a firewall log meet all that? No, that is the opposite of a firewall log. But honeypots, which I'm a big fan of, which we have lots of in Microsoft, is a machine that sits there and does nothing. It's not a production machine. It should never be attached by anyone. So we put web servers and SQL servers and yada yada servers out there, and we just wait for someone to touch them. Now we have to fine tune out all the advertising, NetBio stuff, and broadcast, but if someone tries to log into one of those computers, tries to log in, we alert, we investigate, and we find out what it is. It is low noise, high value. It's a fake asset. Nobody should be trying to log in, and we catch insiders as well as outsiders using that. Sometimes I laugh. I don't know where all the honeypots are, but I get invited because of my knowledge about them to a lot of the projects. And we are following some people that were attacking Xbox or something. And the hackers, we let them go in the environment so we could collect evidence to prosecute them, which we did. But they were like, oh, Microsoft is so clueless. You know? And they invited all their buddies and all their friends and everything, and we arrested all of them. But they were just, I remember just reading, they're like, they're so terrible. Microsoft's an idiot. I'm like, yeah, we're collecting legal evidence, and that takes a little time, but we are collecting. So data-driven defense, focus on root causes, reduce initial exploits. Assume breach defense, you still need that, right? Because it's very tough to be perfect all the time. And then your defense in depth stuff, which I kind of noticed this week. Defense in depth, I'm now seeing it's being called like computer hygiene or something like that. Like the term is being changed on me. I may have to update that slide. But that is a complete defense. Oh, get the picture? If not, just download the white paper. Do not buy the book yet. If you accidentally buy the book, email me and I will send you your money back. Matter of fact, I ordered a copy of the book with the blank pages yesterday. My wife's like, why'd you do that? I said, I can't wait to have it on the coffee table. Nobody ever reads my books anyways, so they'll just see that. And I said, I wonder how long it's going to be before any of my friends come by and goes, hey, your book's blank. It's going to be a long time. Yeah, my wife, she used to like proofread my books, the first book or two, and then she stopped, and once I found her like completely asleep in one of my books. And I swear to God, I'm not making this. One time she's like, I can't sleep tonight, where's your book? I've got 3 girls and a boy, and my girls are going off to college, and every time I wrote a book about once a year, I'd hand my girls the book and say, hey, take this back to your college library, signed, so much more valuable. Here, take this back. And one of my girls looked at me, she's like, Dad, we don't have room in the car. I was like, you don't have room in the car for 3? I went, oh my God, that's how, I'm trying to make them eat broccoli or something, right? They were making up excuses like it wouldn't fit in the car. So the next time I went and visited them on the campus, I saw the 3 books. They had put it under the monitors, and the previous books I gave them were underneath a garbage can. That is what my books were worth. It was apparently dropping the garbage was too long of a distance. But so if you write books these days, unless it's about sexy vampires, you don't make as much money anymore, and your kids will not care. So how does Microsoft do it? So one of the first things we did, and this is, by the way, this part of the presentation with 30 minutes left or whatever, is going to be about half how Microsoft IT does it, maybe a little bit more than half, and then also how we put it into our products and stuff like that. But this is really, truly how Microsoft has done it with many examples. And this is not so sexy, but it really is a big thing. Remember I said that most companies have business silos that don't talk to each other. One of the things we noticed in Microsoft is that when we found a really big exploit, let's say that it was some type of HTML exploit and it was found in email, that we didn't do a good job of saying, hey, that can also be exploited here and there. So we'd fix it in Outlook, but then we wouldn't fix it immediately in Internet Explorer or vice versa. So somewhere along the way, people said, hey, let's make sure that if this particular exploit or vulnerability occurs, that we fix it in all products at once. Okay, that's smart. But here's the bigger one, is that we then didn't communicate to our own employees that, hey, you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't use this thing. Like unpatched Java is a big deal, right, anywhere. Java's not, a lot of people hate Java. I don't hate Java. I hate unpatched Java, right? If you patch Java, it's not going to get exploited nearly as much. Now, almost no exploits. Very little 0 days in Java. It's mostly unpatched Java. But we had a big problem of it, and we went through this big series of exercises to go get rid of it, to patch it, get rid of it, remove it. We unattached it from the browser. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of us in Microsoft noticed that, oh my God, all of a sudden out of nowhere, about half the people in Microsoft had unpatched Java on their systems. We're like, what? And me and Aaron Margosis, if you may have seen Aaron Margosis' talk yesterday, good friend of mine, but we were like, what's this? This is terrible. Oh my God, what is this? And we looked into it. It was our product. It was actually a new Server 2016 product that was being beta tested. You know, we dog food and do that. And they pushed out this product that had unpatched Java in it. And it was in the entire server beta type thing, and we had to put a big halt on it. And it created, you know, people weren't happy that they'd pushed for years for this particular product to have it all of a sudden stopped. And I thought, well, why did, and let me say, the people on that team, when I told them that product cannot go in Server 2000, and it went all the way up to the top level. I had people threatening my job. I'm going to call Satya. You know, I was like, well, maybe you better get some data before you do that. But I said, you know, how did it happen? How did these people that are employees of our company not know that unpatched Java was a bad thing? They didn't communicate. Right? Like all the people in IT knew, all the people in IT security knew that unpatched Java was a bad thing, but the people that are making new products over here said it was the best thing in the world. It worked across all kinds of platforms, and we're trying to be multi-platform, and blah, 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 blah. So we created this new IT Risk Management Council, is what it's called inside of Microsoft, and it has all the leaders and all the representative people, technical and administrative people from all the silos, those separate business silos, and they have a meeting at least once a month, and they communicate the biggest threats to Microsoft and risk, and then it's up to each of the people attending to communicate that to their employees. And if there is a big outbreak, big vulnerability, big change in the threat thing, it goes to that council so it can be communicated across to all business units, and then each business leader has to communicate it out to their employees. Sounds small, it's not sexy, but it works quite well. It works quite well at Microsoft. And we send out the monthly minutes of the meeting to all the employees so that they can see what we're discussing. More accurate social engineering training. Every company, most companies, social engineering either via email, the web, or some other type of media is their biggest problem. My favorite one is when people go, hey, Microsoft called and said I have a virus, and I just need to call them and let them come into my computer and we'll patch it or whatever. I was like, Microsoft would never call you. You'll have a hard time calling Microsoft. You're right. But what we found out is that social engineering, when we got the data, played a really big role. And let me say this, it played not only a really big role in all of our exploits, but it played a really big role in the most damaging exploits, the ones that really cost us a lot of time and or money. So we had a renewed focus on it. It comes out, and it's not just once a year, it's all the time. The red team does it all the time. Our anti-social engineering training is so good that we have, when someone sends out an email inside of Microsoft going, hey, you need to click here, people are like, is this a scam? Is this a scam? Like literally, it's amazing. Like people are like, I can't even send out a global email anymore for people to do something they need to do to keep their jobs because everybody thinks it's a phishing attack, you know, or something like that. But even better, one of the best things we did is we took one of the most trusted, valued, smart employees who's teaching here this week, and we put him in a video, and he said, I got phished. We put him in videos. He's one of the smartest guys in Microsoft. Y'all would think he's the smartest guy in Microsoft. He gets some of the best ratings in Microsoft. And he's like, I got successfully phished. And this is what happened. It looked like it came from a coworker on a project. It was a spear phishing attack. It looked like it used the project title that we were working on, and it used a document that I thought was a bit weird, but it was related to our project. And then I opened it, and I ran it. He goes, not only that, but he goes, after I opened and read it, I was like, what's this guy talking about? This isn't that critical. He goes, for a couple hours, I thought there's a chance I may have been phished, but he goes, I was too embarrassed to call IT to tell them that I just possibly got exploited. I'm trying to fix it on myself and this and that. But he goes, it took me a while before I realized I need to suck it up and call the help desk and tell them I've been compromised. And putting that video out to all the rest of the Microsoft employees that were not him, including me, one of the guys I look up to, made us all think, hey, we make mistakes. And it had the biggest impact on Microsoft, decreasing social engineering at Microsoft from one thing, that one video. Oh, that's funny. I was talking to some of the red team, and they were telling me they actually found out a training that we were doing. So there's a particular division that was high-risk subject to social engineering, and we gave them specific training. And we don't know why, but for whatever reason, they were more likely to be exploited after the class. Swear to God, I'm not making this up. So we literally stopped the class. We don't know why. We have no idea, but the data, we ran a couple of classes. We're like, these people are far more exploitable after the class, and we stopped the class. We don't know why, but the data showed something. So we stopped it. This was the first case, Conficker. Anybody remember Conficker virus? It's kind of old, but the reason why I have it here is one of the first cases of Microsoft using data to help our customers. So Conficker is a worm, came out in November 2008. Multiple major exploit vectors. Could be that you didn't have something patched. I think so you can look MS0867, that'd come out, the patch had come out a couple of months before, but if you didn't have that patch, it could just hit you that way on the server service. It could try to, if you had admin shares open, it could just go through your admin shares, or it guessed 100 passwords on any share that you had, and it also worked across USB key auto run. It eventually impacted tens of millions of computers around the world. I was in India at the time teaching a Vista class or something, but they're like, oh my God, we've got Conficker, and they went all around to all the computers in Microsoft India in that building, and they're like, every single one of them has it. No, your USB key has it. The guy was spreading it everywhere. But I was like, have you scanned that USB key for a thing that's known to infect USB keys? He was like, The problem is that many years later, after we had put out, hey, we put out the KB article, here's the patch, here's all the things you need to do. It was still just going crazy. Look, much worse than even earlier on. We're like, wow, we're sitting here years later and people are still being nailed by the millions in a particular time period. So we created a project called Backstreet, and it looked at the data. We actually told all of our real-time analytics. So if you ran the Microsoft software removal tool, or you're installing a patch or something like that, or you used one of our anti-malware products, if it detected Conficker, it would also check to see if you had the patch applied, did you have admin shares, or did you have a USB key infection, because that would leave a particular signature behind. And what we found out is, even though early on it was that people didn't have unpatched computers, USB key auto run had become the biggest threat over time. So first we released a group policy. We said, hey, this group policy, if you apply it, will turn off USB key auto run, but we're not going to force it. Then the data came back so strong, we changed our minds. We are going to force this on you. Anybody remember that? Like, that was a big deal. People were pissed. Microsoft was going to push a GPO setting down that broke auto run. We got yelled at. The media was tough on us. After that week, Conficker went down so low that it's nothing but noise now, because we use data to attack it. Not only that, but we learned when we have a KB article and we tell you this is what you should do, they should be ranked in the priority of the things that will help you. And we can change up those recommendations. If we think that US key auto run is going to be the biggest deal, that will be the first thing here, instead of saying make sure your password shares are appropriately password protected or something like that. We also decided we had thousands of databases across Microsoft that were tracking computer data and security stuff. We pulled them into all one big database, or set of databases with a lot of tables. Our CSO got a team of people, 10, 15 people. He hired a new fantastic woman that's in charge of this whole thing, and they consolidated the data, or their views. And also, when you have all your security data that's locked down, what else do you got to do? When you get all your security and vulnerability data, you got to protect it. So even me, I've got a new project I'm starting. I had to request that I have a month's worth of access to a particular table in this database, because they don't even let me in there anymore. They cut you off. You have a certain length of time. You've got to do it from a secure SAW, secure admin workstation, and you only have it for a certain amount of time. And they're doing really cool stuff like visual data stuff, really cool things. But we brought all the data in, we aggregated it, and we tried to do, the biggest thing was gap analysis. So again, we created big data. And data-driven defense became a big bet, permeated our culture, projects, and goals. And what's the best way for you to do it at your company? Download my white paper, send it to them. Or you can have the book on your desk. You'll look very important with the new book. And then we reanalyzed our most likely threats based upon historical data. We decided that gut feeling wasn't enough. Gap analysis. We got a list. First of all, we got better local threat intelligence. Then we got a list of everything that's collecting security logs. So that's Windows event logs, firewall logs, HIDs, NIDs, anti-malware, all that kind of stuff. And then we did an inventory of what those detection capabilities were against the inventory of the high-risk threats that we face. And then we figured out what the gaps are, and we filled in the gaps. And it took time, but what we found out is that a lot of the detection capabilities had 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 redundancies, which is not bad, right? 2 antiviruses is better than 1 antivirus, but by the time you get to your 7th overlap, there's very little value in there. Maybe you should spend money on the gap, and that's what we did. We started buying products that filled in the gap. So literally, I wish I could show it to you here, but I can't show you Microsoft's actual defenses, but it was literally a spreadsheet that said, here's the risk, here's all of our defenses, here which one of those defenses will detect those threats, here's the gaps, and we bought for the gaps. And we decided, how about undetectable stuff? Like pass-the-hash attacks early on were very difficult to detect. A lot of things. So we started asking ourselves, there's a lot of big stuff impacting our customers. What can we do? And we did a lot of things. Like one of the things, PowerShell scripting, that's a big attack avenue now. A lot of the malware programs are just PowerShell scripts. Well, we added PowerShell auditing. And we have all kinds of recommendations for PowerShell and PowerShell remote protection and make sure you sign your scripts. But we did things like we didn't before that. We didn't document in the event log what was the script or the batch file commands that ran in the command line. We do now. So we looked at where the gaps were, we fixed it, or even for pass-the-hash attacks and stuff like stealing Kerberos tokens and golden ticket attacks, we got a bunch of people in a room for weeks and go, how can we detect pass-the-hash attacks? How can we detect golden ticket attacks? How can we detect whatever? And it took us a while, and we had a lot of false positives and a lot of things that created too much noise, but in the end, we came up with, we know how to successfully, accurately detect pass-the-hash attacks or golden ticket attacks or whatever it might be. And all of that information of how to detect the undetectable fed into advanced threat analytics, into the Windows Defender, ATP product, advanced threat protection, and the Azure Security Console. We also added a lot more honeypots, and even I don't know where all the honeypots are. So if you have an insider that says we had people that kind of looked around for stuff, they now get, hey, we see you looking at this database over here. They don't know it's a honeypot that they've touched. They just think it's a SQL Server or a web database. And that web database or that web product is a complete clone of a real product. It looks like a real database. We just do copies on over. And we just go, hey, why are you messing with that server? It's not what you're supposed to be messing with. And they just get a warning. But of course, we also follow them for a while then after. Also, we put red herrings where we have fake data and fake things, but the fake data, so if the fake data ends up on the web, we actually pay a company that looks for the fake data that we've put in our company. If it ends out on the web, we know we've got an issue. And tripwires and things like that. The big thing we do is baseline anomaly detection, first formally covered by Dr. Dorothy Denning in 1986. I came up with anomaly detection on my own head, like in 2006. I thought it was really brilliant. Wrote it all down. Turns out she'd done it a long time before. And she's like, it's all right, Roger. When I forget what she made. Oh, Matrix. She's famous. She created the Matrix security model. She goes, I made it up. She got her doctorate on it. But she told me, she's like, it turned out the whole Matrix thing was some mathematics guy had done it like a year before me. I thought it was all brand new. She brought it to her husband. The husband went, oh, this other guy, oh, Lattice. It's the Lattice security model. She told me, she's like, yeah, some other guy had invented it before I did, like the year before. But he just hadn't applied it to computers, so she got her doctorate on that. But you got to enable monitoring. I'm amazed. Where do most attacks, successful compromises happen? Server or client? Client. Guess how many companies pick up all the events off their clients versus all their servers? It's like 10%. Every company I go to is like, yep, we got all the domain controllers covered and we got all the servers. I was like, what about your clients? Huh? Her? Well, that's where the attack is starting. So you got to turn on auditing. You want to record normal baselines over time. So you wouldn't, like, if you're going to say how many bad password attempts we had today, well, what would be anomalous, right? If your company gets 4,000 bad password attempts today, what's anomalous, and when do you want to trigger the IT team? So let's say 4,000 is bad. I would double or triple that number before I call IT, security, or generate an event. Why? Because when the bad guy is coming in, they're coming in heavy. Or you could just have a script that's broken. That's pretty common too. Has an old password. But you want to make your tripwire event on that baseline be pretty high so that it absolutely indicates, or a good chance of indicating, maliciousness. And then you look for unexpected changes in location, occurrence, timing, duration, source, and patterns. Like, should a web server be connected, or should this workstation be connected to that workstation? Should this server be connecting, if you got a SQL server, should that SQL server be connecting to every other server in your environment? Should it be connecting to all your clients? If all the clients are supposed to go through a web interface, should any of your clients, besides the management people, be going through directly to the SQL server, and so on? So we started to think about what is normal and what is not normal. And again, if I was to give you a direction out of here after today, I would say go make 10 events that, if they occurred, would absolutely indicate badness. If you can get 10 things implemented in your event log alerting system that are high value, low noise, that's better than 99% of the companies. Location, that's a big deal. I'll talk about that one some more in a minute. But I get emails all the time. I get hacked all the time. I write for a living. I'm always insulting hackers. Although, let me say, I don't insult them as much anymore, because they can literally just take you down, right? Like, even I was with InfoWorld a couple years ago. I'm still with InfoWorld, but they were like, we were writing this big takedown of anonymous hacking, about all the badness they do and everything. And we're getting ready to release the article, and I remember telling the editor, Eric Knorr, I said, I'm so glad about how brave you are knowing that we're going to be completely compromised because of this. And he's like, Roger, you shouldn't joke about things like that. I'm like, Bob, I'm not joking. I thought y'all knew this. They're like, that's what Anonymous does. You dog them, and they break in and take all your emails and throw them on the internet. He's like, look, it killed the article. It killed the article, right? So I don't worry about me being attacked and compromised. I've not been, in my 30 years, successfully compromised. People try all the time. It will happen one day, I'm sure. I doubt I'll get out of it. I'm 51. I got another 16 years in here. One day it will probably happen. But I can't stop them from breaking into Microsoft or InfoWorld or CSO Magazine, right? And causing a lot of heartache for people that I like, or even myself. So, but the reason, why did I go through that? I lost my train. Why did y'all make me get off my train of thought? But the reason why I said that is I'll be here and I'll get a warning going, hey, do you happen to be in Hong Kong as well? I'm like, no, that happens all the time. I get lots of location warnings from Microsoft. I'll show you some in a minute. Network flows to and from unexpected locations. This is, if you've ever done network analyzing, trying to find out where stuff's going from and to, that's an entire job itself. This is a great thing for summer interns. When you get your interns, like, we need to have a better understanding of the baseline of who should be talking to who and what's anomalous. This is a special one that I love that we implemented. So in Vista Server 2008, we implemented a new logon event called special groups. And a special group is any group you want to name it. It can be any real group. You put the SID and you got to push it down to the registry of that machine. But then if someone logs in with that group, a member of that group, it creates this event. So at Microsoft, we have a policy that domain admins can only log in to domain controllers. Same thing with enterprise admins and blah, 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 and they must come from a secure admin workstation. So if someone accidentally belonging to domain admin logs into a regular machine, it generates this event. We have all of our elevated groups, hundreds of them, defined in the registry, and it generates this event, and whether it was on purpose or not, it kicks this out. So if you have an attacker that does pass hash attacks for domain admins and connects to anything that's not authorized for that domain admin to be on there, it generates this event, it goes and it gets investigated immediately. One simple event that you can do that will change and detect the undetectable. Oh, here's one. This is a project I'm currently working on. But everybody knows this. Like my friend that was telling me he got the 30,000-page vulnerability report. Everyone here has gotten these long vulnerability reports, right? You got to patch all this stuff. Here's the 600 things you need to fix. And out of those 600 things, about 2/3 of them are the highest severity. Severity number one, you must fix right away, right? It's so bad. Even, suppose you only get 25 number ones. Nobody can do 25 number ones. So using data-driven defense technology, I went, hey, this is crazy. What is the number one way that Microsoft applications are broken into the most? And I came up, it was literally this, when we finally queried that new big database we had, it came back with one thing that was like involved in 60% of all successful exploits. It was not social engineering. And then we took and we used different software that scans our applications and scans our websites and does vulnerability analysis, and we found out that that software has a customized priority field. So if you have your Fortifies and Qualises and Rapid7 stuff, there's usually a field in there where you can re-rank priority. And we created a process where we query the database for what the number one successful attacks are, and it changes the prioritization of your report on your website. No longer are people being given a list with 100 number ones and trying to figure out which number one that I do. I remember even, I've got this coming up, maybe it's here. And it's all here, yeah. Here's one, software patching. If you look at how you're broken into the most by unpatched software, you'll be surprised. The initial root cause exploit usually is not Windows, Microsoft software anymore. It hasn't been for like 5 years. It's usually browser connected things, Java, Adobe Acrobat, whatever it happens to be. It changes over time. But if you get the data about how you're broken into, you're going to find out that out of the thousands of programs that you need to patch, 3 to 5 of them account for almost all the risk. And if you fix just the top one, it's usually, this is a little bit old statistic, but Cisco a couple of years ago said unpatched Java was responsible for 90% of all web exploits for a particular year, about 2 years ago. It's in the white paper. And if you added in Adobe and Flash and stuff like that, it was almost 100%. That meant everything else that your patching team was working on gave you almost no benefit. Imagine, and then imagine at the time, Java's not nearly the problem that it was then, but imagine you could go to your CSO and go, hey, we just did a collected data analysis, and Java, unpatched Java is responsible for 90% of all of the risk in our organization. But right now, the problem with unpatched Java, people are like, well, I can't patch it because it'll break stuff. All right? But if you give them a sheet that shows data that is 90% of the risk in your environment, he's going to let you get rid of Java, because that's what happened in Microsoft. We were able to present the data in Java, unpatched Java. Even Java, let me tell you, getting Java in the environment is really tough today. Unpatched Java is going to get you in a lot of trouble. As a matter of fact, I was on a meeting just 2 days ago where there's a product that was found to have unpatched Java that they were trying to implement into our environment, and they wanted to put it on a secure box and a SAW and all this stuff. Like, we're going to really lock it down and everything. One of the guys right below the CSO went, it will never happen over my dead body. And we're talking patched Java. And because he remembers seeing the data and how big of a problem it was. And I told the guys, I had to tell the guys, here's some background. It was a bad deal. It cost a lot of money to stop it, blah, blah, blah. But once you have the data sticks. But now Java isn't quite the problem, right? Everybody disentangled it from the browser and that sort of stuff. But the idea is that if you're doing it right, you're really be far more effective concentrating on 1 or 2 or 3 programs, getting them 100%, than trying to get 100% across everything that you will not work. Find out what your top problems are, patch them. Same thing, red team. I went and talked to my CSO one day. He's like, hey, I just got a report back from the red team, and here's the 20 ways they took over every machine. He goes, Roger, what should I do? Hey, Mr. Smarty Pants, with your data-driven defense, which one should I do out of these 20 number ones? I was like, well, which one are attackers using? Like, what your red team finds, or someone you've hired to be a red team, has really not a whole lot of basis in fact with what's actually your highest risk attack. So what we did is found out how are our servers being compromised, and that's what we fixed first. No more unranked list. When someone brings you an unranked list or 20 number ones, say which one really is the number one, and I really would like data. to show me. No more unranked list. You should start to ratchet a little bit. This is unranked. I'm going to have to give it back. GPOs. I was once tasked with applying 1,000 GPO settings, right? Here, go apply 1,000. Let me say in Microsoft, to get one GPO setting pushed across all the servers in the environment is an act of Congress and takes years. But like, Roger, we want you to push 1,000. And I started to think, is 1,000 really giving me a lot? So I did the research and I found out that our highest threats had almost no ranking with GPO settings. If your number one threats are social engineering and unpatched software, what are the GPO settings you're going to use to stop social engineering? And you know what? That social engineering is starting to use something besides passwords, right? So you have to disable passwords as best you can. There's no GPO setting that says disable passwords in Microsoft. There is no GPO setting that says you must patch Adobe Acrobat first. So I started to question, did we even need to do the project? And what we came up with was kind of a, compromise. We found 10 GPO settings that are the ones that were most likely to impact the things that GPOs could do. And if you go look on the internet, you can find my articles about it. So rank everything. Rank everything based upon your experience. Oh, this is another one that I love. And we turned on AppLocker on everybody's machine in Microsoft, but audit-only mode. Most people in Microsoft don't know it. They don't know that AppLocker is running, but it's only in audit mode. But when you start AppLocker, you snapshot and baseline the machine. So before we give the machine out to somebody, we have an image. We snapshot the image, and we tell AppLocker, audit anything that goes on this machine that's besides the baseline, a new program or something. Then when you get infected with a virus, and our anti-malware system detects that you have a virus or a Trojan or something like that, we can actually look back to the AppLocker log, coordinate them, and find out how long that virus or malware worm was on your system before the anti-malware system detected and removed it. Because if you're downloading the virus and the anti-malware deletes it right away, that's no risk. It was not successful. If it took it a day or 2 or 3 days to detect it till definitions got updated, or for whatever reason, that is really the risk to you. The risk to your organization isn't, I found a virus and deleted it. It's how long did it take to find the virus and delete it? And not only that, but we also we actually create a score that says what is the mean time to detect that particular malware program, and is it increasing or decreasing over time? And we go to our teams and go, hey, the mean time to detect seems to be increasing for this particular class of malware. What's going on? So we can better defend. And if my machine gets infected, they go, Roger, that virus, not only did it clean it, but Roger, we noticed 3 days ago you got infected. What have you done in the last 3 days? What databases did you touch? What things did you do in the last 3 days? That's a whole lot better than, hey, Roger, we cleaned up Configure. Or the spit on the ground. Also, suppose you're saying, Roger, this is a great idea, but I don't have any data whatsoever. We have no data. It's a great idea, love to talk, really great, would love to have you out there to do it for free, but we have no data. Almost everybody has a software inventory. Do a software inventory OS and software programs, and then start to find out which one of those seem to be infected less. We do that in the Security Intelligence Report. We tell you different operating systems and which ones are more or less infected. But what we find out internally is that certain combinations of things get infected a whole lot more. And from that, we'll say, okay, it's Windows 10, but it's with an older version of Safari or something like that. Whatever it happens to be, that tends to be, oh, we're starting to see this increase in this particular combination of software. We start to focus. We ask the question, why is it on that particular software? Why is this Windows 10 being more vulnerable to that problem than Windows 7? What can we change? So if you have no other data, you have a software inventory, use that to start to figure out what your biggest threat is, what your biggest threats are. The best data-driven defense report you could ever give is that you've got the right data, you know what your number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5 biggest causes are, you've got the data, and then you can go to management and go, hey, if you allow me to spend more money on anti-social engineering, it's going to mitigate 45% of successful attacks. If you allow me to spend money to do credential hygiene on our applications, that's going to save us 28% of attacks, and so on. The best data-driven defense report you can get is say, here's our attacks, our localized threats that are successful against us. Here's the mitigations, and this is what you can expect from that. That right there is the king report. Tough to get there, but that's what you need to drive towards. And of course, Microsoft realized that we are collecting tens of billions of events every day for Microsoft and internal customers. And we're able to see patterns and events individual customers cannot see. So we took all of these learnings and put it into many of our platforms. Microsoft Advanced Threat Analytics. So that if you look at, this is a slide, I think it's from an older version of ATA. It's ATA 1.5 or something. Now we're on 1.6, 1.7, something like that. But you'll look and see that some of the stuff we look for is working abnormal working hours. That's in our product. Well, even without our product, that's something you could do. So we just looked and defined what's anomalous. We take baselines over time, and then we report on them, and we try to find the who, what, when, and how, so that you get a report like this one that says, user 2's Kerberos tickets were stolen from here to access these 6 resources. We didn't have that information a couple of years ago, but we do now. Data-driven defense. Or like 16 abnormal computers. How come it doesn't say abnormal users? Azure Security Center, same thing. We took all the lessons learned, applied it to Azure resources, looking at abnormalities. So, and we tell you how much of your stuff is unpatched, what you need to patch, what vulnerabilities we find. We give you recommendations. Detection, we'll tell you, like I like the top one, RDP brute force attacks. I think that's the #1 attack in Azure right now, is RDP brute force attacks. I don't know for sure, I haven't looked at the data, but the last time I looked at the data, that was the #1 attack for all of our customers. What does that mean for you? Well, it means, let's say it again.
Don't open RDP.
Or, as long as it's patched, maybe make sure you're using the secure versions of it, right? You're using certificate-based. And if it's not RDP, maybe it could be some other application or something. But no, good thing. But what I would say is that you want to make sure it's secure. Are you using good passwords? Are you requiring, like we do, smart cards with it or something like that? At least it gives you some information about this is the most attacked thing. And you can respond and do that with that. Here's some other one where we're actually recommending in Azure Security Center. Make sure you install anti-malware, right? Well, that makes sense. Enable auditing on SQL servers. That makes sense. Apply system updates. I certainly understand that. Although, I love severity. High. Which one is the one that they actually use? Here's another one. This is an interesting one. So this came out of, I think this came out of the Security Intelligence Report 22. But, oh look, communication with malicious IP. But you see, so RDP brute force was 1/4 of that. Spam was 19. SSH brute force. So getting this information out of SIR can't hurt you. But if you're not running RDP, it doesn't mean much. So start with your own localized threat stuff and then move out. Then we got Advanced Threat Defender, and the same thing, right? It's starting to do data. Starting to use data to tell you where you have problems. We only have a few minutes left. But now, with Threat Defender, we can tell you that you're having a pass-the-hash attack or a malicious executable injected, and where not only this, but where it came from, what machines it compromised, right? Y'all have probably been to the demos of it. But the only reason I'm showing these is just to show that we took data that you have in your Windows event logs and turned it into actionable information. There's lots, anybody can do it. You can do it yourself. We did it before we had these products. Here's Outlook and Hotmail now look at over 100, I think it's over 120 different attributes when you log into a Microsoft account to tell you whether or not it thinks you're abnormal or not. So here's where it's telling me I was logging in from I was in California at the time, and then 5 minutes ago I was also in China or something like that. Could that be? I'm not even sure where that place is. I don't know, Kurdistan or something. So they asked me to verify my account. Oh, here's another great one. This is from Microsoft Security Intelligence Report. Here is the malicious file types blocked by Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection. What's interesting about this is that Word is way up there. JavaScript is actually below. That surprised me. JavaScript's usually above. But Excel, not so much. But what's this mean? It means that if I was doing end-user education, first of all, I'd say, great chart. What does my own statistics tell me? And now I need to communicate this to end users that, hey, we've got a lot of malicious Word docs coming in. This is something that we need to educate about. So what do? Use your data, move to a data-driven culture, start by analyzing your own data, get better threat intelligence, do gap analysis on detection and prevention, and if you figure out 10 new ways to detect high-risk threats using data and implement, you're a rock star. This is it. I'm just telling you, use data to detect your highest risk threats and to right line your defenses. Hopefully you got my email address. On the first slide, you can download it. I think I have to download this version, a couple of changes, but I'm ROGRIM at Microsoft.com, ROGRIM at Microsoft.com. Got a free white paper. Be glad to talk to you. This is, if you're not here, you will be here one day. This is where you need to drive to get data-driven defense, no more unranked list. Thank you very much, and I'd be glad to take personal questions afterwards. Y'all have a good rest of the conference. Thanks for listening.